As we've covered before, planning, it's not the only thing, it's everything. When we go ahead and plan our improvements, we're remodeling the whitetails world. If we are going to remodel the whitetails world, it only makes sense to do so in a manner that benefits our hunting. How do you do that? You do that through planning. All right, now, one of the big questions is what can we realistically achieve? Now, I'm lucky. These days I manage 2 ridiculously large properties spread across Missouri and Iowa and then in Illinois. Because I'm doing the hands-on full-time management work on these large properties, I can go ahead and offer deer everything. I can darn near do whatever I want on that ground. But when I was managing a 40 before that, you know what? That wasn't the case. When you're talking about real world properties, rarely can you have everything. You have limited acres. Because you have limited acres, the deer are not able to have, generally speaking, everything they want and need on those limited acres. Okay, so what can that person with a 20, a 40, heck, 10 acres go ahead and do to improve their hunting? Can they make it so they have it all? Generally speaking, no. But the answer really revolves 100% around mature buck bedding. The way I approach this stuff, I absolutely positively have to understand how the mature bucks are utilizing that ground. Most specifically, I really need to know whether Mr. Big is bedding on that ground. When it comes to mature buck bedding, mature bucks place a ridiculously high premium on their bedding sites, offering them security, offering them escape routes, and generally speaking, making it so they can slumber during the daylight hours without having to worry about their entire world ending just like that. That is very vague. So what specifically are they looking for? Generally speaking, in country that isn't tabletop flat, elevation. Elevation tends to be king. When they can get out on the point of those ridges, what's called the military crest, they can go ahead and bed there, and they can use their eyes to see everything below them. They can often use, when the wind's blowing down that ridge, their noses to protect the backside. Then they have ample escape cover. They spot something way down here, well, you know what? They can go ahead and they can zip around the point and be down that other side without that danger ever knowing they were ever even there. Same with it approaching from the backside. The wind is going the right way. You know what? They can slip down that point well before that predator has any clue that that buck was even bedding on that point. Safety and escape routes are king. And generally speaking, in areas with rolling topography, how do you find that? You find that by getting high and keep your eyes looking low. In flatter areas, you know what? Those swamp edges are often really good areas for mature bucks to bed. If there's a peninsula of dry land going out into that swamp, you can almost guarantee that there's going to be deer bedding on that like crazy. Same with those little islands out in that swamp. Oftentimes that's where Mr. Big is going to gravitate to, the edge of that clear cut. If he's a moderate to low pressure area, high pressure area, he's going to no doubt find an opening within that regrowth tangle of a clear cut. Now, in flatter areas, when they can't get elevation, what they tend to use is cover as their advantage. Thick, nasty, impenetrable cover that nothing's coming through it without me hearing they're coming. Okay, and then I can oftentimes bed on the edge and use my eyes to see the front part. So now, do you have prime bedding on that 20, 40, 10 acre piece of ground? If you have prime mature buck bedding, you know what? Great, run with that. Many people don't. When you don't have prime mature buck bedding on your ground, and at the same time the neighbors do on theirs, guess what? You're probably not going to get Mr. Big to consistently bed on you. So what do you do there then instead? Instead, try to create a buck trap. There's 2 general ways of creating buck traps. One is to do it with does and food. Lay the does out on your 10, 20, 30, 40 acres in a way that you can hunt the bucks that are cruising them. That means put one doe group on one side of a funnel, another doe group on the other side, and you know what? You can hunt that funnel, but if you can get there, you have a safe wind for hunting it, and you can get out, you can hunt that funnel over and over and over and over, and the does never have a clue they're even being hunted. Mr. Big doesn't either, but he sure does when he comes through to check them because he's walking through 20 yards in front of you. Another way to do it is to trap them with food. Offer them the best food they possibly can get if they don't have other great food sources in the area. And then there's the third option, that's your ground's a transition zone. You have bedding right here, you have feeding right here, your ground's in between it, that's fine. You know what, you don't need the bedding or the feeding because they're going to be coming back and forth through like that every darn day that they're feeding, going between bedding and feeding. Okay. In that case, what you do is you focus on creating a pinch point on that property. If the pinch point doesn't naturally exist, you manufacture it. The entire point of this episode is not to go ahead and try to match your improvements to what you want to have. Instead, match your improvements to what you realistically can have that you want. I know there's a slight distinction between those two statements, but it is a profound distinction. You're almost always better off trying to take what you have, what your ground can realistically offer, and put it on steroids for deer usage than try to get them to do something that they do historically have not done on your ground. The more you cater your improvements to achieving reasonable, realistic goals, the more satisfied you're going to be with your results. We're trained to want everything. We want to have Mr. Big bed on us. We want to have Mr. Big feed on us. We want to have Mr. Big cruising does on us. Here's the problem. You can't, especially when you're dealing with a 10, 20, 40, 60 acre, 100 acre property, you can't always have it all. So instead, figure out what you have. Focus on your attentions on putting your advantages on steroids and minimizing your disadvantages. Cater your improvements to what you have. If Mr. Big is betting on you, awesome. Make it so that, man, his staging plot happens to also be on your ground and you have the first crack at him in the morning and first crack at him in the afternoon. If instead Mr. Big does not bet on you and your neighbors have prime Mr. Big betting, focus on creating a buck trap. Either trap him with your does and or food, or trap them as they cruise through your transition property to get does and food on the other side. Either way, focus on what you have and what you can achieve as opposed to what you're told that you should be striving for. When I deal in reality, I almost always have so much wildly higher success rates that when I try to force a square peg in a round hole, I'm betting you'll find the same.